our Snowpiercer recap, season 2, episode 7, our answer for everything. I'm here with Rich, the one who mostly gets things right, and I'm Dan, the one who mostly gets things wrong. We're going to discuss this episode, which was sort of action-packed, and yeah, let's get into it.
Do you ever meet that player who was just born in the wrong period? Because I feel that your predictions are just like a month too early for
I
everything.
know, right?
Right? Especially this week. I really
know.
went back to one of your where you really put
Rabbit out of the hat there.
yeah, you really put your head on the block for one of them early on in the series, and I came back to prove you right. A little bit late though, but what did you think of this episode overall? I didn't love it.
No.
Especially because I really loved last week's episode, and this week's episode, I think it's because it didn't link up in the timeline, because they're obviously taking 2 weeks, or God forbid, they take like 4 episodes to catch up with where we finished in the last episode. So I think that's what disappointed me about it.
Yeah, I didn't like a lot of this episode because it seemed like they were trying to force the storyline, and there was just a lot that they either did too quickly or they didn't really give me enough information on why it happened.
Right. Like, I'll give you a little example of just like how they just throw so much stuff at it, and sometimes you kind of think, what? Like Sam, the head brakeman.
Mm-hmm.
I thought his family died.
Right.
But he has a family.
Yeah, I was gonna say we finally
right. Is it just me, or did you see that and say, oh?
I actually, when I saw that, I was like, oh look, we get to meet his family finally. I wasn't sure whether or not they were dead or whatever else. I'd sort of glossed through all of that. But yeah, the thing that really gets me is like the plot of the episode was, I mean, just rushed and didn't connect at all for me, and that kind of annoys me. I don't want to go too much into the main issue that I had with it, because we'll get into that. We should discuss some smaller issues first. But yeah, the one thing I did take away from this episode that I enjoyed was Ruthie. So
I liked the Till story arc as well.
I like Till, but I didn't like the arc that, because everything about it was a little bit like weird. Also, like I said, I always watch it once and then watch it twice, in order to, properly write things down. So she, as much as I enjoy her and all the rest of it, there was that newspaper article when they were with the Russian family that gave you the answer that it was the pastor. And she still needed further proof that
we called it 2 weeks ago, so
yeah, so it was one of those things where they were just like, he went to church all the time, blah blah blah, so on and so forth, and then she still needed to go to the first class. She needed to have that interview. She needed to hear the lady say the shepherd and all the rest of it in order for her to know. And it's just sort of like, if I could have made that connection, you could have made that connection. That's the only thing I'll say about that. But yeah, we did call it. I'll give you the credit for that more than anything else, because they didn't bring him in, and you were just like, yeah, there's no way that they didn't bring him in unless he had some ulterior motive. So there you go. You were right again.
Again, it's like he's killed off now. Or, I mean, is he? Like, I mean,
no, he's not. He's
something we'll get to.
He's new Icy Bob. Icy Pat.
Maybe he will be, yeah.
I mean,
Icy Bob's prepped. They prepped him at the end of the episode.
For what?
Prep Icy Bob.
Yeah, I don't even know. Like, I don't even know what that meant.
All right, so the start of the episode was, I mean, a lot of the episode was about these tensions after these 8 murders of the Breachmen, and there's a lot of tensions between the Tail, who obviously everybody's pointing the finger at the Tail, and the third class, basically. I'll say it again. Third class is the coolest part of that train.
Yeah,
it just looks cool. Like, it's got this, like...
The marketplace.
It's like Blade Runner futuristic kind of, like, you know what I mean? It's got that going on. It's got even like Japanese thing, and it's
Pike.
It looks like a scene out of like John Wick or something.
Yeah, I'll definitely agree with that. I like the Blade Runner analogy. As soon as you said it, I was like, oh, I definitely see that. I enjoyed Pike sitting in third class with a whole bunch of those big empty water bottle things.
Did you enjoy the baby bottle bong?
Oh man! So as somebody that's had to fashion bongs out of things before in my life, I really had a deep appreciation for the fact that he turned a baby bottle into a bong. Like, I mean, that's my soul animal on that train is Pike. I'm a big fan of his, even though he's kind of lost a little bit. I mean, so to go back to what you said about the beginning of the episode, I just wanted to point out that Mr. Steroid Freak Boscovich has emotions. He was crying.
I kill you. I heard him say.
But he was crying, and I thought that was adorable.
Yeah, showing his human side.
Also, just in one of those loose ends that I find kind of interesting, I understand that the killing of the brakeman creates a lot of unrest, and it creates a lot of finger pointing and all the rest of it. But weren't the brakemen one of Wilford's biggest allies?
Yeah, but they got turned.
Did they actually get turned? Because I thought they were still for Wilford. Because they said they were sitting it out, right? If you remember that scene when Till goes into the break room and she's asking who's cut off all the fingers or whatever else, and they're just like, yeah, we're sitting out everything.
Oh, the breachman.
Yeah, Bridgman. Sorry, not Brakeman. Right. Yeah.
Yeah, but I think they were, when push comes to shove, they'll definitely be on Wilford's side. Well, this is the thing. It seems like 3/4 of the train are on Wilford's side right now.
Yeah.
Okay, so before we get into that, I want to kind of do a little bit chronologically. So Till she's investigating the death of the brakeman, and she finds a vintage Wilford button that she eventually tracks down because there is some Russian babushka who sells vintage stuff in second class, and they eventually track it to some woman in first class who had not very well hid her black eye with some concealer.
I was gonna say, the scene opens, you see the black eye, and then Jill wipes away the non-makeup to reveal that her eye was a black eye the whole time. I was just like, that was bad as well. She's appeared sporadically. Like, she's one of those characters that just like randomly pops up every like 6 to 10 episodes. You're like, oh, I think I remember that face. You are just like one of those extras from first class, and finally the extra is gotten. Every time she pops up, though, she has a line or two.
Yeah.
But nobody that you'll ever really remember.
Well, I doubt we'll see her again.
Oh no, she's done now.
Yeah.
She's made her money.
And we also had the story of Audrey. Oh, yeah, let's go into Audrey.
Yeah, let's do Audrey.
Over on Big Alice. Fairly early on in the episode, they radioed over and asked, "Hey, are you coming back?" And no, she's going to stay at Snowpiercer for a while.
Yeah, so it's hard to tell, even with everything in the episode. Like, it's hard to tell where her allegiances lie. Like, it seems like they're for Wilford.
Well, even Wilf was not sure.
Right.
I mean, the story has been developed that Wilford requires blind devotion.
Right.
Or blind loyalty, let's call it.
But she is her own independent woman. Shout outs to Beyonce. I just want, if we get the Beehive following us, we're all good here.
Right, yeah.
There's nothing I enjoy more than that. Yeah, so he does require blind devotion. So Leighton tries to talk to Audrey, and I think sort of fails at his communications with her. He's like, "Is everything okay? Are you okay? You missed curfew." And I was just like, way to be sneaky with that, bro. Like, you really fooled Wilford there. He had no idea what you were talking about.
Well, you were right. He did find out. He did know that she was trying to mess with the communications with the screwdriver.
Right. He was able to, I think he knew that, and then just sort of rummaged through her stuff and find out a way to bring it up to her, and that was his way to bring it up to her. Yeah, she's in the famous bathtub at the beginning, and she comes out and she sort of communicates, and then Wilford cuts off communication, sort of a little angrily at the end. And yeah, I just don't like. I don't know where she lies. I just don't know where she lays. Like that's basically where it comes down to. Like she's a very confusing character for me. Um, I wasn't a big fan of her becoming a main character. I think I've mentioned this a couple of times in our recaps. Like she wasn't a huge character in the first season, and then she just sort of seems forced into this season. And yeah, I'm just not a big fan of hers. Obviously, she has a pivotal role to play.
Yeah. And we also see that Alex is being shut out by Wilford.
Yeah.
She wasn't in the know about this hit on the Breachman.
Right. So she's being shut out, which is not the first time. Which she mentioned. She says, you're shutting me out again. Although now we're just going to go all the way to the end because, it's interesting. At the end, Wilford, Audrey, and Alex sort of seem like a united family. That very last scene, as they're looking at everything, and Wilford puts his arm around both of them. So that was kind of interesting.
I don't know, because I focused on Alex's face at that point, and she was not a member of a happy family.
I wrote down something interesting. Is that Alex still calls her Melanie? She doesn't call her mom. So I think that's kind of important. We've been saying this all along, ever since Alex was introduced, and ever since we, first episode, is that she's not fully loyal to Wilford. We know that, and that's going to be where, if he loses power, it's going to be from her. I think in some way, shape, or form, she's going to be sow the seeds of his demise. Although I'm not exactly sure how that is going to manifest itself. But she seems to be a little bit of his weak point. And it's interesting to me because she's repeatedly said derogatory things about Audrey. And Wilford has snapped, but still is loyal.
She called her a whore this week.
I know, right? And I was waiting for like a real reaction. And so I wrote down at that point, I was like, who is Wilford actually more loyal to, Alex or Audrey? Because he's got a long history with Audrey, but he's got a long history on the train with Alex. And he allowed Alex to call her a whore and said, I like your moxie, essentially. So that was...
Yeah, but then he made it fairly clear that's the last time you'll call her that. So,
yeah.
We're going back. So Wilford kind of wants to see some show of loyalty from Alex. But he also wanted some from Audrey as well. Why don't you get into this?
Yeah. Oh, we want to get into my boy. So let's go back to Dan being right, but a little bit late. Is that I'm the player that changed his career around at the end of his career in order to extend his career. Call me Vince Carter. Yeah. So Kevin makes an appearance again. He's locked up in this room, and chained to a chair, and he's recovering from his wound, his arm wound, and basically Wilford says, turn him, fix him, heal him, turn him. He must be, whatever else. I don't like this part. I really, really dislike this part. This was my favorite part of the entire episode because. She takes this. I'm gonna sort of speed through it because I just didn't like the way that they did it. But she takes this broken man with a sliced up wrist or sliced up arm, I guess technically, and she converts him in the space of a day to be loyal to Wilford again. She takes him from a sniveling mess to somehow be able to talk to him, and I'm not sure how. I don't know how. Like, there's best psychologist that ever lived. There was no.
Yeah, I don't really know, and also I just don't really know where they're going with it.
No, neither do I. Not a clue.
Because I think the story still stands without it. Like, the devotion to Wilford is still believable without that. So it really felt to me like one of those extra things. Oh, let's chuck it in. Let's put it in the story. Maybe it'll, do well with the demographic. You know what it's like nowadays. It's not just one person writing it. And I don't know. The
only thing that I can see coming out of this is that we might get into a little bit more of Audrey and how she related to getting people on the train for Wilford, or some like a flashback scenario where we see her, like recruiting people for the night car and seeing how influential she is. It's the only thing that I see.
I don't know, because let's face it, we're about halfway through season 2 now, and we've had one episode that had flashbacks, basically.
No,
apart
I
from
know.
a 5-minute thing in season 1. So.
I'm just trying to figure out, how this actually plays in. That's the only thing that I just don't, I don't see it any other way. But what I did write down, based off of that scene, and the only thing that I do kind of find interesting is that she's kind of like, Audrey's kind of like Ghislaine Maxwell. Yeah. She's the one that lures them in for Wilford, the Jeffrey Epstein of the train. And
maybe
lick his slipper.
Yeah, stuff like that. It's weird. I'm not down with that. Like, I don't know.
No, they really push the envelope on certain things. They have some very strange scenes. I've discussed this in the past. The bathtub scene in the first episode was so bizarre. The mango scene in the night car was so weird. And then this as well. It's almost like they're trying to, like you said, hit different demographics throughout the whole thing. And they're just like, this will get the sex crazed demographic. And you're just like, but I don't want to watch this.
No.
Yeah, like this doesn't interest me at all. And speaking of different demographics...
I was talking to someone about this the other day. I don't know why they put sex scenes in TV shows, because I just fast forward them. Do you just, like, if you're watching a show that has a sex scene in, do you just fast forward it?
I'm trying to remember the last time that I watched a show that had a sex scene in it. Yeah, no, actually, I'm watching a show. I don't fast forward it, but, I also don't sit down and watch most TV the way that I watch this. You know what I'm saying? So, and this is on TNT, which is regular cable, which means that it doesn't really have sex scenes. It just has, like, supposed sex scenes. So, I don't give... I mean, I watch it. I don't think that it ever really builds, but every once in a while you get, like, an argument in the middle of a sex scene, or a conversation that's important. One of my favorite scenes in a movie of all time, which is a movie that is now horribly looked down upon, is Crash, and Don Cheadle's having sex with his Puerto Rican and whatever girlfriend, and his grandma calls and he's like, not now, mom. His mom calls and he goes, not now, mom, I'm banging a Mexican. It's like in the middle of the whole thing. And the movie is looked down as horribly racist now. And this is probably one of the reasons why. But I remember watching that scene and just dying laughing and rewinding it and watching it again. So, hey, you never know. There might be a joke in the middle of a sex scene.
Yeah, it's pretty rare, though. Yeah, so what do you... Where's Audrey going? Is she there now? Is she just by Wilford's side, and it might be a kind of a slow burner for her?
I don't know. She doesn't.
I don't really care as well.
I know, neither do I. That's the thing. I hate her story arc. She has now become my least favorite character.
Oh no. I don't know.
When I say least favorite character, I don't mean like somebody that I actively dislike, but somebody that I actively on the show just don't care about.
Josie's least favorite character.
She wasn't even in this episode. Her twin, her little twin was in this episode for a little while.
The cleaner woman.
The cleaner woman. The one that I was just like, oh, look, it's not Josie. Yeah, I had that moment, and I was just like, oh yeah, this is how they got it over on them in the first season when they were changing clothes and all the rest of it. Yeah, I'll agree that she's my least favorite character, personality wise, and whatever else. But I just don't like. I don't get.
LJ is joined first, I believe.
I like LJ because I just like the fact that she's just like such a, I don't know, just like she's so out there and she's so like. She's actually just like a rebellious Westchester teenager. So like I kind of like relate a little bit to her. I don't like her because I don't, because she's an asshole, but like I'm just like, oh yeah, she's like the girls I went to school with. Like it relates to me a little bit. I just don't care about the Audrey storyline. Like I just can't get into it. There's not been one moment of season 2 where she's featured a good amount of time. Where I'm just like, man, I'm so glad that she's part of this. Like, it just doesn't ring true to me. It doesn't sit, maybe the storyline's not meant for me. Maybe it's meant for a 35-year-old woman to empower a woman. Like, I'm not really sure what it is, but it doesn't hold true to me. And I'm sitting here and I'm just like, yeah, okay, so she's going to continue to play a part in it, and we have to care about her. But I just don't, you know?
Whilst this is happening on Big Alice, revolution is fermenting on Snowpiercer because there's big tension between Third Class and the Tail. Leighton goes on Tannoy and gives some speech, and it doesn't seem to work whatsoever. Yeah. And then we start getting roving bands of Third Class trying to kind of attack and beat up Second Class. And there's a couple of different bits of it I really want to focus on because I found it quite interesting. One is there are various tailors who are trapped up train, and they end up being given refuge in the clinic.
Right.
And then eventually Ruth and Zara come in as well. And we have this reaction from Winnie, the kid, who's petrified of Ruth.
Correct me if I'm wrong. This episode is the first time we've heard her speak.
Yes? Yes.
Right? Okay. I didn't know whether I was going crazy. I was just like, I've never heard her talk before, and now she's got lines. So the Angel of Death is no longer the Angel of Death. Her whole family's dead, though. We we know this. So yeah, she does a great job at being able to add to Ruthie's humanity, because can we before we get it too much into Winnie, who I could sort of take it or leave it as it does to the storyline. Let's talk about Ruthie, because I think
I kind of, that's why I wanted to bring it in.
Yeah, I think that's the one part about this episode that I really, really enjoyed. I really enjoyed watching her grow. And, she comes in and tells Leighton that he shouldn't have made the announcement, which was important. Like, she understands people. Like, through and through, she understands people. She has the conversation at the beginning.
Like anyone who works in hospitality.
It's true. I don't understand people.
You do have to. You do have to interact.
She talks about Audrey at the beginning of the episode. She has a moment with Roche where she discusses the scene at the border where she's just like, in the past I would have gone, but part of me, I wanted to stay loyal to Snowpiercer. And then we get to see her sort of emotional side when she's dealing with Winnie, when she has all of these, where she's told by
lies.
Yeah, there you go. That Winnie is petrified of her because she de-armed her mother, and her mother died because of it. And then Ruthie has a whole crisis of consciousness. Her hair gets a little frazzled, which that's a cinematography thing that I like to focus on, obviously, as we've seen in the past. And then she goes looking for Winnie, who escapes a locked room somehow. And she finds her in the observatory area and sort of, talks to her and cajoles her and,
apologizes.
Apologizes and gets the first words out of her.
Do you think this has been some realization for Ruth that, I don't know whether in her mind, and it's been chipped away in the last few episodes, she had this kind of almost moral superiority over, especially someone like Leighton. But maybe this is a stark reminder that we all played by different rules back then, and we all did some things we'd like to take back.
Well, she said that's that conversation with Roche, right? Where she said, like, can it go back to when we had order? And he was just like, you want to run a gulag in the tail again? And, she, prior, she would have just been like, I mean, rules are rules, but like you see her have an understanding of that now, and even when they were in the room and they're like, she's scared of you because they're talking about winning. They're like, they're scared of you because of the tail. She's like, I was never in the tail. And then it occurs to her that she was only ever in the tail for the bad stuff, So I think she does have this sort of like crisis of, realization that, the train is the train and it's for everybody. And, there is no reason to put anybody above anybody else. You know, whereas before she blindly just went about things with her devotion to Wilford, who obviously wasn't there, and all the rest of it, and the rules. And now I think she just has a devotion to Snowpiercer as a successful entity.
Well, then we also saw, as we said, there's these gangs of third class going around trying to find tailies and beat them up. And they find one. They find Pike.
Who tries to fight off a whole horde of people with one small knife.
Yes. Unsuccessfully, I may add. And they come up with the idea that they should de-ice his, well, they should ice his arm. Just before that happens, Leighton and Ruth, because Leighton said he's going to go, but Ruth actually offers to come with him. So she kind of feels involved in this as well. We see that Leighton owes Pike, so Leighton decides to offer his arm instead of Pike's arm, which the third class accept. And as he's getting prepped for it, Ruth gives some inspirational speech.
So last week, my prediction was something along the line. I gave a very specific, weird prediction, but also I said that Leighton's going to lose power, right? And that's been, I think, one of my, themes going forward is I think he's not the man for the job. She is the woman for the job. Like, I think that's what this episode showed me. And even as she's standing there and yelling at them, he is your leader. I was just like, no, he's not. You are. Like, you are definitely the person Leighton made so many stands in this episode that failed. You know, he got over the loudspeaker, made the announcement, which didn't work, and then he offered up his arm in replacement of Pike's, and that didn't work because they were just going to take his arm. They showed no loyalty to him as a leader, and it wasn't until Ruthie spoke up that they were just like, oh, okay, well, we won't take his arm then. Like, like she is really come forward as the person that should be the leader of Snowpiercer in my mind. You know, not Leighton. Definitely not Leighton.
I think there's some space for redemption for Leighton. I think he's going to come back.
I don't think he has the ability to lead like that. He had the ability to, we've talked about this throughout our recaps and all the rest of it, is that we think, he's a rebellion leader, but I don't think he's necessarily the leader to take over after the rebellion or the revolution.
Well, I actually think long term, looking into next season, we're going to see a takeover by Wilford. And I think probably the rest of this season and next season will be life under the regime of Wilford, which is going to be pretty bad for most people. And then we'll probably end up with another revolution at the end of season 3. And that's kind of long term forward, I'm thinking.
That's how we ended this episode was basically the takeover. Like, this is the thing about this episode that I liked the least. And you said we were going to see Wilford take over, right? I think that was your prediction for this episode.
Yeah. And I think I'm kind of 1 week early on that.
No, but you're right. No, but you're right. Because they just called for him. I don't know why. I don't know how. But somehow they get to this corkscrew and they make any sense to me. Oh, we're back. We'll be there for a second. Yeah, I don't.
Just repeat that last bit.
Yeah, so the end of the episode, they're going through this corkscrew where you can see...
The Himalayan roundabout.
There you go. And you can see everything. And going back to that Russian babushka, they had the red tea light or whatever, and that relates to Wilford. So at the end of the episode, as they're going and they can see all the train cars, they've all put red lights up in their windows. And so they've all called for Wilford. Like, the entire train basically is called for Wilford, except for Roche. He doesn't want to put his up. But it doesn't make any sense to me. There is no...
But, like, if you were just some second-class person, like, who paid for a ticket, you'd probably want him, right? Like, wouldn't you want Wilford?
I don't know. Maybe. I guess you're probably right. Like, second class, first class, still going to be very loyal to him without a shadow of a doubt. But I just don't. There was nothing about the episode that just directed me to. This is the reason why I did not like the episode, is that there was not enough that pointed to that ending.
Yeah, or even just enough organization on one side to be like, hey, we're all going to put red candles in our windows. Can we not see part of that? Can we not see a one storyline of
they literally gave us the red
collaborators,
candles. Yeah, they gave us the red candles as a one-off type of thing in the middle of the episode, and then the end of the episode, they're like, "You see, we brought it all the way back, and now they want Wilford." It doesn't make any sense. I did not enjoy that at all. And also not only that, but I got to the end of the episode, and I was just like, "All right, so I get Kevin, you get the pastor being there. All of our other predictions are off." Man.
You know, it usually it's one of those episodes. I don't watch it twice. I just watch it once, but I'll pause it. So it probably takes an hour and a half at least to watch one episode. This episode, I don't even think I paused it.
No, I have a quarter of the amount of notes that I normally take.
Yeah. We should get before we get on to predictions and looking back at how our predictions did last week. Till finally realizes that the pastor is is the guy behind all this. So she goes to see him, and they end up fighting. And then some other woman comes in and tries strangling Till, who eventually gets beaten up or dies, or I don't even know what. And then the pastor killed himself or tried to. I don't know if he's dead or not. I mean, he's probably not.
No, he's still breathing when she pulls the bag off of his head.
Okay.
So he's definitely still alive, but half of his face is horribly frostbitten.
Right.
So there's going to be something about that. Like somehow he's going to end up getting goo from the headwards or something like that. Once again, in my prediction show to go wrong, and this I literally just came up with. There's no reason for them to show him with frostbite on half of his face if that doesn't lead to something.
Yeah.
But yeah, so she definitely figures the whole thing out a little bit slower, I think, than the viewer, as I mentioned before. But she's definitely coming into, as we said all along, she's coming into her own this season. She's really, playing a big part. It's great to see her beat the crap out of him, and really take it to him, and also have the wherewithal to, go in and save his life. So that way, she wasn't, she's not just, this guy's committed a crime, so therefore he has to die. Type of deal. She's like, this guy's committed a crime, but we need to keep him alive. It's going to be important, to either question him and figure out, how they communicate or something like that. And I thought that was an important bit.
Okay, so last week I predicted that Wilford was going to take over the train. I'm not taking that as a win, but I think I'm 1 week early with that. I think next week he's sitting in the engine.
Yeah. Oh no, next week he's in the engine for sure. No,
yeah,
there's no doubt.
But I do have some predictions for this week, a little bit bolder. Number 1. A secondary character is going to die. I'm going to go a main tailie. Maybe Lights, maybe Pike, maybe the Australian guy, maybe the big guy who speaks Chinese. Maybe even Big Boy, yeah. Maybe even that guy in third with the beard. The kind of the main guy in third who's got the beard. Maybe him. He's always sat in the canteen. A secondary character will die next week. Ooh. And carrying over my prediction from the week before, Wilford is in the engine at the end of next week's episode. And I'm going to go Alex betrays Wilford in some way.
Ooh. Okay. So it's going to be the first time that I'm just going to agree with you on your prediction for next episode. Wilford ends up in the engine. I think that is an undeniable truth about what's going to happen. We've sort of seen that at the end of this episode. So I don't think that's even really going out too far on a limb for either one of us to say that happens, which means that the borders are open. Because the borders are open, I think we'll see some weird rekindling of this Australian love romance thing. I know that that's a weird thing, but they keep kind of mentioning it. So they even mentioned it again in this.
I know, yeah. It's like, where are we going with this?
Yeah, what's the point? Like, awesome love down under, baby. I think my prediction for Alex is that we get to see her and LJ's friendship evolve a little bit more.
I don't think so. I think Alex is locked in, Big Alice.
Interesting. I think she comes across, and I think LJ and her. I don't think they create that storyline unless there needs to be something to that storyline. Once again, I like to keep, continuations going, even though I'm sort of wrong about this for the most part. And then I think instead of Alex being the sort of revolutionary, I think it's Ruthie. And I think that Wilford will have a little bit of blind faith in Ruthie, even though she didn't cross the border, as being devoted to him. And I think somehow she sows the seeds of doubt in people's minds next episode. And she is the big, catalyst against him, despite the fact that he's in the engine.
I don't know. I really think Wilford's going to be running things for like the next season.
So I don't like him as like, I don't. He's just, like I said, everything that surrounds him is a little bit weird.
Yeah, I don't like this freaking magic hypnotism rubbish from.
It doesn't make any sense to me. Like, I understand that this is a sci-fi movie, but it's a sci-fi movie about the future. It's not a sci-fi movie about magic tubs. And yeah, and that's what it seems like with him. So I'm not a big fan of that, and I'd love it to continue to be a war between the two factions more than anything else. That way he can only take up part of the episode.
Good.
Yep, that's what we got for this week, folks. I hope you enjoyed. And tune in next week.
See you later, everybody.